Hello, today we're going to do the rock, paper, scissors lab. This lab could be, I'll just say, this lab could be better. We will learn more techniques that could be used to make it better, but we're kind of limited with what we have. At this point, we've learned about variables and we've learned about ifs. We could make this more interesting with repetition, but we don't have repetition in our toolbox right now, so it kind of is what it is. I think of this as the first fun thing we do because it's actually something that you could play, sort of. You know, sometimes we write programs to see if there's an S in the word snake, but this isn't one of those. That being said, have a look at these specifications. I'm sure some of you already did it, and then you're looking at this video. Yeah, you might need to change some things. You could do this other ways, but I'm telling you, you have to at least meet these criteria right here. So, generate a random number between 1 and 3. All right, so the computer is going to choose rock, paper, or scissors. You're going to have to use a random number for that. This part right here, write an if statement to assign either rock, paper, or scissors based on the value of the random number. This is the CPU's choice. All right, so it's going to generate a 1, 2, or a 3, but you need to turn that into a rock, a paper, or a scissors. I'm just telling you, I know you could do this project without doing that part, but I'm saying you have to do that part. Because I'm trying to force as many ifs on you as I can. Give you some practice writing them. And then you're going to say, hey, user, what do you want, 1, 2, or 3? So once the user enters 1, 2, or 3, then you're going to write an if statement which assigns either rock, paper, or scissors. Right? So yes, the user will enter 1, 2, or 3, but then you are going to turn that into a word, rock, paper, or scissors. Right? So this is an if, this is an if, and then down here, this is the big if. This is the logic of the program. Write an if statement to evaluate the result of the battle and display the appropriate output. And you have to use this following format. You chose, something. Computer chose something. You won, lost, or tied. So that would be an adequate format. Look, I'm okay with you writing that as more of a sentence, but that sentence has to say what you chose, what the computer chose, and what the result was. Like you could say, player chose rock, computer chose scissors, player wins. You could say that. I do need a reference to the weapons and the result. And that's it. Sometimes you tie. In real rock, paper, scissors, there's a lot of ties. But you see, this is just a one-time game. If you both tie, you tie. That's what it is. All right, so let's do this. Let's start writing the code. Okay, I'll call this RPS. And I'll start going. So, create a random number. If I'm going to create a random number, then that means that I need to import random. This is from the lecture. If you're like, oh, why that? Well, the lecture. So then I want to generate a number between 1 and 3. So I'm going to need to make a variable to store this. So I'm going to generate a random number, but I also need to store it. So you need to use your brain and think of, what do you want to call this variable? This variable is going to represent the random number that the computer works off of. I'll call it random num. You should not copy me. This is where you officially start digging yourself a hole if you're copying me. If you can't come up with a name for a variable which is going to store a random number, then that's a big problem. We spent a whole week talking about variables and names. Rando. Num's pretty not specific, but I don't know. I'll say CPU num. I'm just going to keep changing it. Just so if you copied me, you're going to have a problem with it. So it's random.randint. So randint is short for random int. Random integer, 1, 3. That's defining the top and the bottom of the range. And I'm going to print that out just to make sure that it works. And then I'm going to get rid of it later. But for now, let's see. What do we got? 2. All right, that's promising. Run it. 2. That's kind of promising. I don't love it. 1. And let's see if I can get a 3. Not yet. I'm just making sure that I can get 1, 2s, and 3s. Okay, I can. Great. All right, so that was kind of step 1. Now 2 is a big old if statement to turn that into a value, or turn it into like a word or a string. So I'll say if, and I'm writing this. You should already try and write this. Write the if statement. I don't know how to pause for this. You should have already given this a shot, or give it a shot. You see the way this is going. So if the number generated was a 1, then... Alright, I need to come up with a new variable name here. So CPU num was the number. I also need to make it into like a... I need some variable to store, you know, the text-based equivalent of what it is, like rock. So you come up with something. I don't know what to call it. You see, I'm kind of leaning towards calling it computer something, because there's going to be a player thing and a computer thing. I'll say CPU weapon, I guess. And I'll say a 1 is a rock. Could you say that a 1 is a paper? You bet. So from this point, you should be able to finish out this if statement. You really should. Even though you're new to this, even though you don't have a lot of experience, you should be able to finish this if at this point. So give it a shot. Pause the video. Try it on your own. I'm just going to keep going because I can't do it any other way. All right, so I'm saying if you did if it generated a 2, then I'll say it's paper. You see, I'm just going with that order, rock, paper, scissors, like we say it. And can I get away with an else, or should I go with an LF? I'm going to say an else is fine, because I know that you're only going to get 1s, 2s, and 3s. Now you got 1s, here's your 2s, everything else is going to be a 3. You can't always get away with that. But in this case, you can. Alright, could I do like LF, CPU num equals 3? Could I do that? Sure, I could do that if I wanted to. I could do that, but I don't need to do that because I know that there is no way I'm ever going to get anything other than a 1, 2, or a 3. So why would I write an LF? Do you see, an else is easier. An else doesn't have a conditional statement on it. It's just an else. All right, and you notice when I press enter, I'm indented, which means I'm in that scope. I need to back out of that because otherwise it would be inside of it. Now at this point, I'm going to print out that CPU weapon because I have something worth printing. Maybe I'll make this a little more interesting, like CPU chose. Notice I got to do some concatenation if I want this to turn out right, and let's see what I get. Okay, I need a space. Chose, okay. Scissors, let's see. If I'm always getting scissors, that'd be bad. Oh, this does seem bad. I mean, I'm always getting scissors. Okay, there's a rock. Scissors. Scissors are popular. There's a paper, right? That's testing. Testing is making sure that you're getting outputs, or making sure that it seems like it works like it does, and debugging is fixing it if it has problems. All right, you're going to want to get rid of this in the end, but for now, that's okay. It's good to know what the computer chose. Now I'm going to ask the user to enter a 1, 2, or a 3. Now this is going to be not too hard. The hard part is the print message because you need to give the user adequate instructions. If you're ever writing a program, the user should not have to guess what's supposed to happen. So you need to make up a variable to represent the number of the user's choice. You need to come up with a variable, so do it. Player's choice. Number. Terrible name. Input. And this is the part that's hard. This is the big string. So I'll say, choose your weapon. You can say this however you want. And then I'll say like, rock. And then I'm putting a 1, right? I've got to very clearly say, you know, what my expectation is. Paper, 2, scissors. You see, this is kind of gross. And it's got this big scroll bar on it. It's because I always have to go with this tiny little window. That'll probably help. And so you could write this differently if you wanted to. Let's see how it works. Alright, so notice I put in like a 3. You see how that looks? That looks like junk. It's just sitting. You see it's mashed up against it? I don't like that. So what I always do is I go colon space. Now it won't look so bad. You see now it's clearly like, oh, I typed in a 3. And nothing happens, right? Because I haven't told it to do anything. Alright, so I've asked for that. Now this is a terrible name. I know who's just copying me versus who's thinking for themselves, because everyone who wrote player's choice number, you did not come up with that on your own. I know you didn't. You need to be able to come up with your own variable names. That said, I'm going to switch it. I'm going to change it now. I did player num. I bet you some of you did player num, just because like it makes sense, right? If this is CPU num, why not make that player num? Next step here is we need to have an if block like that, and so we're going to translate that player num into a CPU, or a player weapon. Sorry, I just keep looking at that. You definitely should be able to write this if block on your own. So give it a try. Don't just copy down what I do. If you do that, you are not going to learn much. I mean, you might learn a little bit, but not a lot. All right, so if the player num was 1, then I'll say player weapon equals rock. So I just made up that variable name. Notice when I press enter, I'm inside of this scope. I have to backspace out of that scope. elif player num equals 2. Then player weapon equals paper. Now, could I go with an else here? So let's talk about that. Could I go with an else? I'm going to say maybe. I mean, you can't, but I'll show you why. I mean, it makes sense to kind of go this way. I'm just telling you it's not going to work. Not going to work quite right. We got problems. I mash a few enters just to move things down. Let's see how this goes. All right, I choose a 3. All right, well, nothing happened, which is kind of okay. Sort of. Let's print that out. Print. This is just a little path down debugging lane. And I know that I've got a problem, so it's weird. But I'll show you. Player chose player weapon. Let's see how this works. I don't think it's going to work the way that you think it works. Alright, so I choose 3. Player chose scissors. Great, right? Kind of great, I guess. Let's put in a 1. Player chose scissors. Huh, that's weird. Player chose 2. That's weird. Player chose chocolate, right? Chocolate. Scissors. What is going on here? So, I'll tell you what's going on here. Everything's getting caught in this else block. This is a bummer. There's 2 reasons why this is happening. And I've talked about this before, but now you're going to see it again. So, whenever you enter something from an input, it's always a string. And you're comparing a string to an integer. And it's just, they're never going to equal each other. So what you have to do is you have to convert this to an integer. Right? Because you're comparing the string one to the integer one. Is that annoying? Yes, it is. But that's what's going on there. Alright, so now I go 3 and I still get scissors. That wasn't very interesting. Let's see if I can do 1 and get a rock. And I do. Let's see if I can do 2 and get paper. And I did. And that's great. But still, I choose coffee. Okay, well, that didn't go exactly how I thought it'd go, but it went a way. It was kind of going to give me scissors, but the reason it didn't... So, how does this... Line 14, it's telling me there's a problem. So the problem here is when I typed in coffee, it couldn't convert coffee into an integer, so the program crashed. This might be the first time you've seen a program crash. Without this integer conversion here, then it would have been scissors, which would have been wrong, but now it crashed, which is definitely wrong. And so what do you do to protect yourself against that? Well, at this point, there's nothing we can do. If a user is going to do something dumb, like enter a word when you're expecting a number, well, when you try and convert that word into a number, the program's going to crash. In the big picture, this is the bigger subject of data validation. And what we can do is, ask the user to enter something. Then we can check to see if it can be converted into an integer, then convert it into an integer. But we don't really have the tools to do that right now. We kind of could, but we're just going to leave it as it is. This is known as garbage in, garbage out. If the user gives us garbage, well, you're going to have garbage results. I choose cheese. Yeah, it doesn't work. We could stop that from happening, but at this point, that's not what we're trying to do. I am going to get rid of this line of code. This was just used for debugging. It helped, right? You saw I never would have known. This whole weird thing would have been scissors every time, and I would have been all frustrated, but instead, I had a debugging statement here, and this helped me figure out what was going on. So I'm going to get rid of it. Now, some people might comment that out. I'd say that's kind of sloppy to just leave your comments in there, but it served its purpose. The other thing we should do here, and I just remembered, since this is something you're turning in, this is where your name goes. And this is where the date goes. And here's where your description of the project goes. You need to do that. All right, so now on to the meat and potatoes of this, and it's the last one. It's 5. So it's going to be a big old if block. Now this is hard. I say, oh, you should be able to pick a name for something. You should be able to do this. You should be able to do that. This is going to stretch you. I think you could give this a shot right now, but it's probably not going to go that well. So I'm going to do a big old if block, and so think about, can you write the if block? So the if block's going to be, user chose rock, computer chose paper. How's it work? Who wins? Who ties? There's a bunch of ways that you could write this if. Think about it. There's every one of those various potential scenarios, paper versus rock, rock versus paper. Every one of those is going to require kind of its own if statement. There's a lot of ways you could do this. I'm just going to do it the way that I think is the easiest way to doing it. All right, so here's how I think the easiest way to do it is. The first thing to do is I'm going to check for ties. Because tie is kind of easy to write. You could say like if player weapon equals rock, and computer weapon equals rock, then, print out tie. You both chose rock, you tie. Or you can do it like this. This is the one thing that kind of resembles a shortcut here. I'll say if player weapon equals computer weapon, right? So I'm checking for all 3 ties right here. Just first thing I do. I'll say that represents a tie. Then I print CPU and I always say player first, so I'll say player and CPU both chose. How about tie? I'm trying to think of the easiest way to do this. Tie. Player and CPU both chose something. Got to concatenate, and I can say it's either the player weapon or the CPU weapon. Enter, and I'm done with that little thing. Let's run it. Now, the way this thing's written right now, I know what the CPU chose because I still have that debugging statement in there on line here 16. And so I can tie on purpose. So I'll go 3 because I want to tie. Tie. Player and CPU both chose scissors. I don't know. That seems good to me. All right. So at this point, trust me, that will handle scissors, paper, and rock ties. Now I just gotta start working my way through all the individual scenarios. These are all related, so I will do an elif. You see, we're gonna have some nested ifs by the time it's all said and done. So I'll say if player weapon equals rock. I could start with paper or scissors or whatever. There's going to be a bunch of nested cases here, so I am going to write a comment here to make me just kind of remember what's going on. Player. Actually, I don't know if I need that. All right, so I'm going to say, so if the player chose rock, now I need to evaluate like if the computer chose paper or scissors. I don't need to look at whether the computer chose rock because I already caught that up here in this first bucket. And so I'm going to do a nested if. I could do this with ands, but I'm going nested ifs. So if CPU weapon equals paper, that means CPU wins, right? I have to think about these because it's kind of hard. Player chose rock, CPU chose paper. I don't know. I'm always kind of going back and forth how do I want to do this. I'll say you lose. Is that right? Right. I have to think. Because it's weird, right? It seems weird that paper beats rock, but it does. Player chose rock. I don't know. I can live with it. That's a descriptive message. It says what you both chose. People will always try and come up with like ways to try and wiggle out of writing a statement that describes it. I will take off points if you do. So can I get away with an else here? You bet I can. Because I know that the computer either chose in this if block here, right? This is if the computer chose rock, well, I already caught it up here. If they chose paper, well, covered. So the only thing left is scissors. So print And this will be you win. Player chose rock. CPU chose scissors. Is that right? It is right. You see, sometimes I write semicolons. It's because every other language I write in, every line ends with a semicolon. It's just not something that happens in Python. Right, so player chose rock, which is a 1, correct? And scissors is the only thing that's left. Now at this point, you should really be able to get rolling with this. So I'll do an LF. So that was the rock one. This is going to be the player weapon. And I say you should be able to get rolling with this, but I know it's also pretty complicated. It's a giant if. I mean, it's sloppy. It even makes me a little nervous. And then so in here, you don't really need to check to see if the CPU got paper because you already checked that up here. You just need to check if the CPU did rock or scissors. And so it's a nested if. If CPU weapon equals rock, then print, this is you win, player chose, you could say like paper covers rock, I guess would be fine too. Like I said, this isn't robot stuff. You can solve these different ways, just so long as you meet the specifications. And the specifications were basically this part here where it behaves logically like it's supposed to, and that part up top where you converted the numbers into the strings. You could do this many different ways. I mean, I'll be honest with you, when I'm doing this, I'm thinking of, oh my gosh, there's a million different ways I could have done this. I could have done this. This could have been easier. But I don't know. I gotta commit to something. That looks weird. Oh, I don't know why I did that. Player CPU chose. I have to think from it. So we're in paper. This is scissors. I'm thinking that there's probably better ways I could have done this. That seems... I have the feeling that I did something wrong. It's instincts, I guess. And then, can I get away with an else here? Yes, I can. Because the player either chose rock, paper, or scissors. There's no other possible values. So now we're looking at scissors. I'm going to put a little comment here because it's hard for me to remember. So player chose scissors. Right? Because it's not clearly indicated. Here it was pretty clearly indicated that the player chose paper. It was pretty obvious, but here it's not so much. So I'll go ahead and put a little comment there just to remind me what in the heck I'm doing. Alright, so we got to do the old if CPU weapon is equal to rock, then print you win. Oh wow, I got a keyboard no, that's not good. There's like something on my I don't understand why my space bar is getting mashed. That's gonna be a pain. Please stop doing that. You win. Player chose. Yeah, I'm working on a laptop today, which is not something. I don't know. The keys aren't so great. CPU chose rock. Yeah, rock, beat, scissors. I always have to think about it. That's why I like this exercise, because it's something that we're all familiar with, but it's like, how does that work? It's always one is you win and one is you lose. Player chose scissors. CPU chose, I don't know, paper? Well, this just seems wrong. Rock, paper, you see? Sitting here getting confused. I told you. I guess. You don't win with that, right? Oh yeah, no, you win with that. I was just sitting here getting confused. Now I think, I think that works the way it's supposed to work. I don't know. Now, do I have any syntax errors in here? Oh, I could. Oh, you know what I should have done? Do you know when I wrote this first one here and I said, oh, we ran it and made sure it worked? You'd be well off to test it every time you wrote one of these cases. You see, I don't make that many mistakes because I've done this a million times before. But you should run it all the time. And I'll tell you, if you have... Well, let's just test it out. Let's do a rock and see if it works. You win. Player chose rock, CPU chose scissors. Let's just say I did something bad, like that. Right? I just got rid of a colon. It'll catch it on line 33. So it's my problem's probably on line 33. If your problem's not on line 33, then it's going to be probably on line 32. That's all I can tell you. And sometimes you'll do something like that. You see, it doesn't tell you a lot about what is wrong, but it'll tell you where it is. And my best advice when you're debugging things is to so every time you write a complete statement, you can run it, and that'll tell you whether it's working or not. But when you have a bunch of errors, just go and deal with the first one. And now I just need to test the heck out of this thing. All right, CPU chose paper. How about I do scissors? Let's try and lose. You lose. Now, do I have a logic error in here somewhere? Is one of these wrong? Could be. I didn't mean to make it wrong, but testing this, I'd have to sit here and test this for like 15 minutes. Now, what I will say is in the end, what we need to do is get rid of this, where it tells you what the CPU chose. You see why it was useful to have that? Because when I knew what the computer was choosing, it was easy to test. But now it's just, okay, I choose rock, and I don't know what they did, and then we get you win. Player chose rock, CPU chose scissors. Okay, seems like it works. You see, there's not like a perfect way to test this. Just test it over and over and try and make sure you don't get anything weird. So I chose scissors, you win, player chose scissors, CPU chose rock. That seems wrong. Okay, so I don't know, I'll try and debug that. So I'm in scissors. CPU chose rock. Oh, yeah, that's a you lose. Oh, okay. Yeah, those messages were backwards. I'm sure some of you were screaming at your monitor, that's not how this works. Well, that's what testing's for. I am not a machine. You lose. Player chose scissors. CPU chose rock. What are the chances that I just went straight into that again? Okay, that's good. That's really good, actually. I mean, I just got super lucky that it just worked out exactly like the case I tested before. I'm a little worried about scissors. Let's make sure it works. You lose. Player chose scissors. It's like stuck on that. I know it's not stuck on that, but it seems like it's stuck on that. I mean, there's no... How could this be? I don't know. Oh, wasn't that weird? I was like, it kept doing the same thing over and over and over again, which was really weird. I don't know. There's no telling. Okay, goodness. I was worried that when you're getting the same thing all the time. But I guess that's a good way to end. So there's no definitive way to test this because there's the random element to it. You just got to test it enough and see if it works the way it should. That was the rock, paper, scissors lab, and maybe we'll revisit it later when we can do some loops. All right, so thanks for watching, and I also want you to know that your messages don't need to look exactly like mine. They just need to communicate the result and have some kind of reference to the things that each one of you chose. Are there other ways you could do this? You bet. Do you need to do this with nested loops? No. I just think nested loops are the easiest way to do it, but there are other ways you could do it. There's not really other ways you could do this or this. I mean, aside from, you could have different variable names. Now, you should have different variable names. To be honest with you, I will be concerned if I see that this is called CPU num, and this is called CPU weapon, and this is called player num, and this is called player weapon. Because that means that you don't know what I mean when I say choose a name for the variable. All right, so those are my closing notes, along with put some comments in the code, put that block comment in there, and have a good rest of your day.